Welcome to the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee hearings for Tuesday, March 23rd. We have 7 bills today, a couple of Senate bills, a couple of House bills. Again, we had a voting session and had to push back the 1 o'clock start time. We apologize. We will be starting with Senator Ellis's bill 937, followed by Senator Augustine's bill 952. Delegate Crosby's bill will be last. It has obviously the most witnesses signed up. The lead witness for any of the proponents may take up to 5 minutes, although we encourage shorter, more concise testimony. Other witnesses can take up to 2.5 minutes. The committee also prefers you talking to us rather than reading, but if you need your written testimony to keep you guided, that's fine as well. With that being said, Senator Ellis, you're going to lead off. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Pinsky, Vice Chair Kagan, members of Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. Arthur Ellis, Senator representing District 28, most of Charles County in Southern Maryland, here to present to you Senate Bill 937, entitled Housing and Community Development, Mortgage Down Payment, and Settlement Expense Assistance. This content of this bill came out of the Senate President's work group on equity and inclusion. We worked from late spring into summer into fall and winter of last year to look at how we can reduce some of the disparities that exist in our state. And so this bill is an outgrowth of that work group. And I just want to ask Mr. Chairman to have my legislative aide, Charles Regante, present the bill and guide us through it.
Hey everybody, my name is Charles Regante, legislative aide for Senator Ellis's office. I think we're supposed to queue up the presentation. Just Lamoya should do that, I think. Soon.
Okay, did you send that?
Yeah, that should be in there in the original email I sent.
Okay, give me 1 second. I don't recall. Bear with me.
Okay, thank you. All right. Bye.
Okay, are you able to send again? I do not see the presentation. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll just share it with you.
Okay.
Can I put it in this chat?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just do that.
Okay.
Okay, I turned his video off. Yes.
Just put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Mr. Regante, let's get started and then we'll catch up with the PowerPoint. We don't want PowerPoint to slow down the hearings.
Sure. Okay, I can start with that. I was just trying to give you a visual. So today I'm talking about SB 937, Mortgage Down Payment and Settlement Expense Assistance Bill. With this bill, what is the overall purpose of the bill? And it requires the Secretary of Housing and Community Development to take into consideration a family's student loan debt in developing eligibility requirements for certain financial assistance related to residential mortgages. The other part is that it clarifies. Oh, and Lamoria, tell me when you have that presentation.
Will do.
I'm going off of it. Okay. The second part of the bill is clarifying that the Community Development Administration may purchase notes, mortgages, or partial interests in notes or mortgages that evidence certain new residential mortgage loans for the refinancing of existing residential mortgage loans. So with this bill, there's certain facts about student loans and homeowners in Maryland that you have to take into consideration before figuring out whether you should vote for this bill. So the average student loan balance for Maryland residents is $39,505, which is 8% higher than the national average of $36,689. And our state, has the second highest average balance in the country, with only the District of Columbia outpacing it. With homeowners in Maryland, especially during the pandemic, it's rough. According to Senator Chris Van Hollen, Maryland has one of the highest foreclosure rates in the entire country. In 2020, the delinquency rate on residential properties in Maryland was 8.8%. And that means Maryland is ranked 5th worst in terms of mortgage delinquencies throughout the country. So why should you support this specific bill that kind of factors in student loans into the eligibility requirement to give out aid to residential mortgages? Well, let me tell you, student loans can be financially devastating for many students and many individuals. And not just devastating for the individuals, but devastating for the community and the economy around them. And so when I say, did we get the screen?
We did.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
Head to where he is. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
keep starting. Just tell Mr. Stanton where to stop.
Okay, yeah, keep going, Ms. Stanton. All right, that's
Keep
good.
going.
Oh, wait, back.
Go back. Okay.
One back. There we go. Okay, right. So yeah, back to what I was saying is, in general, student loans can be financially devastating for many individuals, and not just devastating for the individuals, but the economy and the area around them, right? So when you have student loans, it prevents students from going to grad school a lot of times, which could mean a higher pay, in the long run. It could also, it doesn't allow students and individuals to put a down payment on a house because they don't have that money. And the worst part about student loan debt is it's not like car debt or any other debt, which is like a physical item where you can just bring the car back if you don't make the car payments. You have that student debt forever, right? And if you miss a payment, it really does affect your credit score. Take it from me. I'm a student. I have $27,000 in student debt. It's a lot. And so that is the impact it has on students, but the impact it has on communities, right? I want to kind of turn to a specific report that I found about this, where the Alliance for a Just Society, which is a grassroots coalition organization, found that an increase in property tax rates in areas goes along with an increase in foreclosures. And when there's more foreclosures, there's a decline in property value of the surrounding properties. And neighboring homes are going to drop an average of 1% for every 7% the foreclosed home value drops. And I want to wrap up in conclusion to what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
Is that since the largest cost that most people have is their mortgage, the aid that's going to residential mortgage owners will not be as effective if the Maryland state government does not factor in the student loan debt. That is my presentation today, and I'm going to open it up for questions.
Yeah, I will open it up for questions. Are there questions for the sponsor? I have one, and that is DHCD says increasing the floor with finite funding would result in about 1,200 fewer first-time home buyers receiving assistance. So obviously, if there's limited money and you raise how much each one can get, it's a balancing act as to whether you want more people receiving a smaller amount or fewer people receiving a larger amount. Can either you or Senator Ellis speak to that?
Yeah, I'll jump in there, Mr. Chairman. So we have to look beyond the amount of folks initially getting these mortgages. We have to look at those who can maintain that home, who can stay in that home a long time. And so if we get fewer people in, but work with them to stay in, overall, the program will be more successful. Because after what we're looking at, homeownership being the largest wealth creator in Maryland and the nation. So if we can have people in the home and stay in their home because we consider their student debt load and we make it more accommodated for them, we are, I think, doing a better service in helping to create wealth. And one day we might come back and ask for additional funding for this.
Right.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Cruz, I didn't notice. We have one more favorable witness, Bill Costelli from the Realtors. Why don't we go to Bill first, and then we'll take your question and any others. Mr. Costelli, welcome to EHE. Always good to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and thank you to Senator Ellis for introducing the legislation. We do think that the Maryland mortgage programs are terrific programs, and particularly because of the down payment assistance. And if you take a look at where first-time buyers have been over the last 30 years, we're at an all-time low. And it's just about opening up opportunities to Marylanders as much as we can. If you take a look at home ownership rates, there's about a gap in the home ownership rate between Black and white families, about 26% in Maryland, which is actually outperforms the nation. But if you take a look at the home purchase programs by MMP, it's about 49% to 52%. So it's about a 3% difference instead of a 26% difference. So these are programs that I think are working. And I do think giving the department a little bit of flexibility on the down payment to address the concerns that Senator Ellis talked about, which is making sure that folks that use this assistance will be successful during their entire loan period, but also giving the department a little bit of flexibility to target that would help. But otherwise, we would encourage, further support of these programs. We think they're effective and they really target kind of a missing segment in our home ownership.
Thank you, Mr. Costelli. Let's go to Senator Carosa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess this would be for the bill sponsor. We do have a shared goal in increasing home ownership. I am concerned that this bill would actually, or that we would actually see at least 1,250 fewer first-time home buyers. So that is concerning to me, that would have that unintended consequence. And I wanted to ask the bill sponsor, my understanding is that this bill is targeted to support prospective home buyers with student loans. Is that with one class of potential buyers we're trying to support in home ownership? That was my takeaway from a quick reading of the materials, Senator Ellis.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Senator Carosa. Excellent question. And so our young millennials and others are saddled with student loan debt. As you heard my assistant Charles say his personal experience. And so a lot of individuals in this category coming out of school, doesn't matter if it's undergrad, graduate school, MDs, PhDs, dentists, whatever, a lot of times they have so much debt that it precludes them from owning homes. So this will be bringing people in. And I believe, I guess when we always bring more folks in, give them opportunities, is similar to, I guess, sharing the wealth. But I believe we should not be leaving anyone out. I mean, people did the right thing. They went to school, they studied hard, they believe in the American dream, and then they are faced with these student loans, and they go and their LTV and all these other issues that they have, their income and debt ratio, and all these ratios are kind of, affected by their student loan debt. And so hopefully we can help those folks come in also. And
And the purpose of my question, Senator Ellis, because I wanted to make sure that I think we all are trying to the extent we can, assist these prospective home buyers who have these student loans. I know I have 7 nieces and nephews that kind of fall in that category, but I wanted to make sure, I didn't know if you were aware that the Department of Housing and Community Development has a program that does just that, called Smart Buy. And so, you know, I try to always look at it from what tools do we already have in the toolbox, and especially if there might be an unintended consequence with this legislation that may actually reduce the number of first-time home buyers. So I would just ask, you know, you to take a look at that program.
yeah, and sure will. Thank you for that. And, you know, the beautiful thing about the legislative process, with all our experiences and great minds come together, we have bill hearings and we listen to each other, and we make good bills much, much better. So I look forward to working with you to do this. Just that with this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ellis. That concludes the hearing on 937. We're going to go to Senator Augustine, 952, Health Occupations, Internship and Residency Training Requirements. Senator Augustine will be followed by Dr. Robert Rhodes. And then we'll take questions, then move to the opposition, Margaret Kern and Edwin Morris. Senator Augustine.
Thank you, Chair Penske, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. Senator Malcolm Augustine here on behalf of Senate Bill 952, Health Occupations Waiver for Former Service Members Injured in Combat. Members of the committee, I just want to start by saying I really have a very soft spot, admiration for those who put their lives on the line for us. My dad did, my grandfather, uncles. I didn't, but that is a story for another time. But suffice it to say, I regret it. I'm particularly grateful to those who put their lives on the line and suffered injury. And that is what this bill is about. Now, I know it's not well constructed and needs work and protections, but the essence, the legislative intent, is to provide a pathway for a person who completes medical school, but who during service to our country in combat is disabled, making it untenable for them to complete the physical rigor of an internship or residency program as constituted. But that we provide an alternate route, understanding the circumstances, to full licensure as a medical doctor. Not in this bill, but contemplated would be allowing a combat disabled veteran who works for a specified period of time as a senior medical assistant in a primary care practice and stays current on the CMEs to satisfy the residency or internship requirements, for example. I'm going to be followed by Dr. Rhodes, who will testify next, who brought this gap to my attention. And he will walk through the legislation that I am fully aware needs additional guardrails and work if the committee wishes to pursue the matter further. Thank you, Chair Penske, for giving me the opportunity to share this legislation.
Thank you, Senator. Let's go to Dr. Rhodes.
Yes, hello. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to come before you and explain what we're requesting. Before making, right now I work in a travel vaccine clinic here in Prince George's County, giving vaccines to people traveling overseas, flu shots, all kinds of vaccines as a medical assistant. Have been doing so for about 25 years. Before making a decision on the bill, I'd like for all of you to become familiar with the training requirements for someone to obtain the MD degree, the Doctor of Medicine degree. You must complete 4 years of college and 4 years of medical school. Usually the college time is spent in the sciences, biology, chemistry, physics, difficult courses, human anatomy, things of that nature. You take an exam and then hopefully you're accepted into medical school. In medical school, you spend 4 years practicing medicine under the supervision of professors that are licensed physicians. You do an internship, acting internship electives in your senior year. So you do get a lot of experience taking care of patients. Now, when we graduate, we can't even give a patient a shot or put a Band-Aid on the patient, a sore for restoration. We cannot do anything. Basically, the only job we're able to find usually is working in a laboratory or working in a physician's office as a medical assistant, a nursing assistant, something of that lower level nature, even though you spent 8 years of training to become a physician. Now compare that to other licensed personnel in the medical field. Nurse practitioners, you can get, I think their training is about half that of medical doctors. You can get an MD, you can get a nursing license at a community college after 2 years. There were some 15-month programs. And there are some online nurse practitioner programs, which means once you complete those programs, you can obtain a license to open an independent practice. So that's 3 to 4 years of education and training. Now let's look at the physician assistant. That program was developed for former medics. And they have some online programs for physician assistants. Also, East Carolina University has one. You do most of your work at away from the school. You come back once or twice a year to do work in the clinic or hospital during the weekend. Let's look at pharmacists. Pharmacists training is longer, but they don't do as much hands-on patient care. Their training is 4 years of college and 2 to 3 years of pharmacy school. Now, they're allowed to give vaccines, and they're expanding into doing other things. Dentists. Dentists complete 4 years of medical school, 4 years of college, and then 4 years of dental school. Once they obtain their degree, they pass an examination just like all the people, former people, a comprehensive examination, and they're allowed to get a license, open a practice, and go to work. So let's take, for example, lawyers. They complete 7 years of education. They pass the bar exam, they go to work. So physicians are the only people that are not allowed to work immediately after getting out of school. Internship residency programs were developed for specialists, not for primary care, not for general practitioners. It was for specialists. Family practice is a specialty. Cardiology is a specialty. Surgery is a specialty. All of these are specialists. So that's what intern and residency programs were developed for. But over the years, what happens is when you've required doctors to get a year of internship, once they get into a specialty program, most of them say, well, I can make a lot more money if I just complete the program. So they complete the program as a specialist, and they don't go back to primary care or general practice. So saying a doctor that's completed 8 years of education and training, seeing patients 24 to 36 hours per day at some time in their in the hospitals and clinics, and being in preceptorships in doctor's office.
Dr. Rhodes, you're going to have to wrap up, sir.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Familiarize yourself with the training program first.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for Senator Augustine or Dr. Rhodes? Senator Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Augustine, for bringing this bill to our attention. So, as you may be aware, one of my other responsibilities among a few things at Hopkins is I run a residency program. So I'm a residency program director at Hopkins, specialized in preventive medicine. And residency is really an integral part of physician training that, what the 4 years of medical school give you are some basic sciences, basic physiology, but to understand any particular specialty, the residency training is really critical to that. And it's not just, residency itself is not just to train people in some of the subspecialties like dermatology or endocrinology, but also in some of the primary care specialties as well, like family medicine, pediatrics, internal medicine. Those are all, residency specialties too. I have it does give me some pause when, these individuals would be able to just waive the requirement for them to have completed a residency and then just be licensed and bypass the traditional licensure process, I guess. I guess for the sponsor, are there examples that you can provide of individuals who were denied licensure in Maryland because of issues related to combat disability?
Well, when you contact,
Let's Senator
Yeah,
Augustine.
Yeah,
Oh,
Dr.
I'm sorry.
Rhodes. That's okay, Dr. Rhodes. So there's a couple things that I would say to that, Senator Lamb. The first is just as with regard to the training requirements that you talked about that are within residency. I understand exactly what you're saying. As I mentioned, the bill doesn't have it, but it really wasn't the intent of the bill, not for the individuals to not have sufficient practical training. So for example, working as a physician's assistant over a period of time where they would gain a level of experience and understanding under the tutelage of a physician. What Dr. Rose has shared with me is that what has occurred with the number of these folks who were in the service, and the numbers are around 100 or so in the state of Maryland, is that when they came back from their service, they could not get into one of the programs, or they were physically unable when they came back to meet the rigor, not mentally, but physically, because they were disabled in the service. And so those were the numbers that Dr. Rose shared with me, Dr. Lamb, and I'd be more than happy to share more specifics about that offline.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to know, how often this is occurring, because obviously I don't want disabled individuals to not be able to do residency, but I know that I've seen residents who have disabilities. I know, we've seen some residents go around with, in a wheelchair to do rounds around the hospital, right? And that's because they have a physical disability. I'm just not sure bypassing the requirements for someone to do a residency is the solution to this problem. If there are others, I'm open to it, but I think there are also more medical students that are graduating than there are residency positions. So every year there is there are far more folks that are trying to get into residency than there are available slots. And so I wonder, is it really because of their disability that they're not getting a residency position, or are they just not getting into a position because they're not able to compete academically? I don't know. I don't want to paint broad strokes against individuals that have combat training that are coming back, or disability from that. So my understanding is that the VA disability ratings wouldn't tell a board how a person became disabled or if they were combat deployed. So how would a board be able to objectively verify that the applicant was eligible for this type of waiver?
That's a great question. I would have to do some research to see. I mean, that's a fantastic question, Senator. And like I said, I'd be more than happy to work with you offline to see, to address the issues and concerns and see if there are some ways that we can help this group of people out.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Let me turn it back to the chairman.
Senator Ellis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Augustine, for bringing this bill. It's, I guess, my question is, piggyback off Senator Lamb's issue about telling who is deployed, injured, and through the deployment. And so being a military member, former military member, I mean, one of our motto is we train as we fight, and then we fight as we train. So a lot of our training is very much dangerous. And I know quite a few individuals who were injured during training exercises. They become disabled, with the highest disability ratings. So why would we want to say, bar those folks who might be disabled? The only thing they were disabled in the training, they were not deployed overseas, or they're overseas, but in Germany, whatever, but they were injured. We have, say, a terrorist attack. That's not a deployment. Folks who say military members got injured at the Pentagon during 9/11, they weren't deployed, but because of terrorist act, quite a few members were injured, some disabled for life. So why would we want to make that distinction between how someone honorably serving their country became disabled to really benefit from this bill?
Is that Mr. Chairman? So I just don't disagree with you on that, Senator Ellis. As I said, Dr. Rhodes brought this to me. He and I have been talking about this for the last couple of years, and this gap for folks. And I definitely appreciate that you share with me a little bit more and the broadening of it. And if it is the will of the committee, I'm more than happy to work with folks on it.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Ellis and Senator Augustine. The opponents, let's start with Margaret Kern from the State Board of Dental Examiners, also Edwin Morris, in whatever order you choose.
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman Pinsky and committee members. The Dental Board finds SB 952 to be very problematic. I've served on the Applications Committee of the State Board for 16 years and know that veterans receive priority consideration when applying for licensure with the Dental Board in Maryland, and our staff is diligent in prioritizing these applicants already. The problem is that the bill does not define disabled. The VA can assign a percentage of from 1% to 100% to veterans. Also, the type of disability is not defined. Even though the provider involved may have passed the requisite basic education and exams, further education for specialists in the military can be problematic. Often the number of applicants outpace the slots available for training of specialists. That leads to disconnects between the didactic and the practice portions and make it more difficult to master those skills. If we remove even those requirements, we do not protect the citizens. SB 952 would allow providers to waive substantive and vital additional specialty training. Having worked for pediatric, orthodontic, periodontic programs for 23 years, I fully understand the depth of knowledge needed to safely train patients in these and other specialties, to treat patients in these and other specialties. I urge the committee to protect citizens of Maryland and give this bill an unfavorable vote. As a 25-year civilian of the Army Dental Corps and a 16-year Maryland State Board member, I have nothing but the highest regard for veterans and have always tried to expedite the licensure process for them when possible. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Kern. Let's go to Mr. Morris.
Hi, this is Dr. Edwin Morris, and I'm a member of the State Board of Dental Examiners, and Senator Pinsky and members of the committee, I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. With all due respect to the good intention of this bill, the unintended consequences are quite extraordinary from a dental standpoint. The bill waives all residency educational requirements for licensure for persons disabled due to a combat injury. In dentistry, as we all know, there are general dentists and there are specialists, endodontists, orthodontists, oral surgeons, for example. Specialists are dentists who have been accepted into very competitive and rigorous educational residency programs that range from 2 to 4 years, depending upon the specialty. This 2 to 4 years is after receiving a 4-year dental degree. The important point that I want to make is that the educational program is the residency. The residency is not separate from the educational program, as opposed to what might be in the training of physicians. The dentist, when they complete the residency, then they can present themselves to the public as specialists. As the bill is written, a dentist, by virtue of a combat injury, could present themselves to the public as a specialist without the rigorous training necessary. This is contrary to Maryland law and would constitute a significant risk. When a patient requires the services of a specialist, they should be assured the practitioner has the training and the skill set consistent with that title. This bill would take away that based solely on an unrelated, however honorably acquired disability. It's the duty of the Maryland State Board to protect the public. And it's my duty as a board member to make clear to this committee that this bill will unintentionally put the public at considerable risk. And for that reason, from the dental standpoint, I strongly urge an unfavorable ruling on this bill. And I will,
Thank you.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Dr. Morris. Seeing no questions, that concludes the hearing on 952. Thank you, Senator Augustine, Dr. Rhodes.
Thank you, Chair Pinsky.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Senator Klausmeyer is not with us yet. I'm trying to get you on, Mr. Secretary Owens. We'll get you on as soon as we can. We'll go to Delegate Kerr, House Bill 14, Pharmacist, prescription drug and device labels. There is no one signed up in opposition. Welcome, Delegate Kerr. Delegate Kerr will be followed by Brian Lowe and Sarah Price. Welcome, Delegate Kerr.
Good afternoon, Chairman Pinsky, Vice Chair Kagan, and other members of the committee. I'm Delegate Ken Kerr, presenting House Bill 14, Pharmacists, Prescription Drug and Device Labels, Expiration Dates. This bill specifies that a drug dispensed by a pharmacist in the manufacturer's original packaging may use the manufacturer's expiration date included on the label or a shorter period as determined by the pharmacist. This applies only to medications in the sealed original packaging. Currently, since a law was passed in 1979, drug manufacturers are required to stamp an expiration date on their products. This expiration date's the final day that the manufacturer guarantees the full potency and safety of the medication. However, a study of long expired pharmaceuticals conducted by the FDA in 1985 at the request of the US military found that 90% of the medicines assayed were perfectly safe and effective to use even 15 years after the expiration date. This bill asks that pharmacists be permitted to use the manufacturer's expiry date as opposed to the current Maryland law, which specifies they must print an expiration date 1 year from the date the drug was dispensed, regardless of the manufacturer's guaranteed efficacy date. Let me give you an example. Here's a medication that I use every day, and I receive it in a 90-day supply from my pharmacy in 3 30-day manufacturer sealed containers. The label specifies in compliance with current law, as it was filled on March 8th, 2021, it expires March 8th, 2022. However, the manufacturer's label has it expiring not until June of 2023. It actually says discard after March 2022. So it's important to consider that insurance companies usually allow a refill on a prescription approximately 75% of the time that it should be used up. If you're a 30-day medication, this means that you can get one 90-day supply you can receive 21 days early. So over time, as the prescriptions are refilled, I, like most patients, end up with an extra full bottle of 30 at the time that I receive 3 more full bottles, and those all get thrown in the drawer, and maybe the one with the shorter pharmacist expiration date will be shuffled to the back. And by the time it's pulled out, the pharmacist expiration date that tells me to discard it has passed, but the manufacturer's date says that it's still good. According to the manufacturer, Galderma Laboratories, this medication costs $27 per pill or $818 per month. And current law says it should be thrown out once that pharmacist expiration date's on there, which would be a full 15 months before the manufacturer expiration date. So House Bill 14 will permit at the pharmacist's discretion either the 1-year date or the manufacturer's date. And I'd like you now to hear from my panel, Brian Lowe of Walgreens and Sarah Price from Maryland Retailers Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Kerr. Mr. Lowe, please unmute.
Sorry about that. I was having some trouble unmuting. Thank you, Chairman Pinsky and members of the committee for including me in today's hearing. As noted, my name is Brian Lowe, Regional Director of State and Local Government Relations for Walgreens. I did submit written testimony, so in the interest of time, I'm not going to read that for you. As Delegate Kerr just noted, House Bill 14 would allow pharmacists to use the manufacturer's expiration date on a prescription label, which is separate from state law right now, that requires pharmacists to use an expiration date of no more than 1 year from the date of dispensing, even though many medications, as Delegate Kerr just showed, have different and longer expiration dates. Up to 3 years can be common. I think of an item as such as an inhaler that you don't necessarily take on a daily basis, and you may just have for when that's needed. There's no reason for that to have to be discarded after 1 year when the manufacturer's expiration date is clearly longer than that. This does obviously lead to patients wasting perfectly good medication and purchasing more, incurring additional costs. Walgreens we have experienced customer complaints about this issue. And in the mid 2000s, we actually changed policy in Maryland to essentially defy state law, and we use the manufacturer's expiration date. While that change on the Walgreens side had been in effect for 15 years, it wasn't until 2018 until Walgreens started getting cited for this. To date, we have been cited 72 times for approximately $82,000 for simply following the manufacturer's recommended expiration date and not utilizing the 1 year expiration date. And with that, I request your support for House Bill 14 to help control healthcare costs. And after the panel is finished, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Let's go to Ms. Price from the retailers.
Thank you, Chairman Pinsky, and good afternoon, honorable members of the committee. My name is Sarah Price, and I'm here today on behalf of the Maryland Association of Chain Drugstores, which is managed by the Maryland Retailers Association. First, I would like to thank Delegate Kerr for working on this bill with us. We really appreciate the support. We did look into the origins of the current law, and we could not find any reason why it may have been written upon request or any justification for the current law for the 1 year expiration date. And as you have heard from my colleague in the industry, the current law has resulted in consumer protection questions and fines for pharmacies. HB 14 is a simple, common sense bill that would help to clear up consumer confusion and reduce unnecessary waste by allowing the prepackaged prescription items to be labeled with the original expiration date. The bill was passed unanimously by the House, and we would urge a favorable report. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Price. Question for Delegate Kerr, Ms. Price, or Mr. Lowe? I see Senator Carrozza has her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Kerr, thank you for this bill. I actually heard about this problem over the interim. And this question might be more for the association or Walgreens, but this problem has affected many seniors, and there's been confusion about this. With this bill going forward, how do you plan to do your communications or educate just to make sure we don't have our seniors throwing away medications and then having to spend their hard-earned money for new medications that they may not need?
Mr. Lowe's probably best to answer that.
Yeah, I'll take a first shot at it. It's a really good question. I think that there would certainly be a gap there. I think it's important to note that it would be up to the pharmacist's discretion that they could still keep it at 1 year if that was appropriate. For Walgreens in particular, we've already essentially discarded this state law and are following the manufacturer's expiration date because we got so many complaints on this. So a Walgreens customer, Walgreens patient would really see no difference. I can't speak for other chains or other pharmacists, but they certainly would have to communicate. I think that's fair to say.
That concludes the hearing. There was no one signed up in opposition. So that concludes it. Delegate Kerr, always great having you here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We're going to go to Senate Bill 948, Senator Klausmeier. She'll be followed by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, George Owings, former delegate. Senator Klausmeier, please, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Senate Bill 948 renames the Outreach and Advocacy Program within the Department of Veterans Affairs to be the Office of Communications and Public Affairs. This change in statute is to update the program and clearly state the program's roles and responsibility as they now exist. The requirements that are added in this bill are already handled by the Outreach and Advocacy Program. So this bill basically codifies current practice within the program. The name change and clear explanation will provide Maryland veterans and their families clear and transparent information on what services the Department of Veterans Affairs can provide for them. With me today, I have Secretary George Owings from Maryland's Department of Veterans Affairs to explain further the importance of implementing this change. And I thank the committee for their consideration of this very important Senate Bill 948 and ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Klausmeier. And as always, Senator Owings, always welcome back. You need to unmute, George.
Still learning, Mr. Chairman, still learning. I'd like to thank you, of course, and Vice Chair Cheryl Kagan, Kathy Klausmeier, a very dear friend of mine. We served together. You know, you two, the chair and the vice chair, are two of the original people left when this department came to fruition. Actually, I looked over the sponsorship, but going back to '99, we're celebrating our 22nd year, of course, this year. And still in the chamber, however, is Senator Benson, Delegates Rosenberg and McIntosh, who were sponsors of the original creation of the department. Very simply, I want to give you just a quick list of us trying to catch up with modern day. Maryland Department of Health, Office of Communication, Maryland Department of Health Services, Office of Communication, Maryland Department of Juvenile Services, Director of Communication, Maryland National Guard, Public Affairs Office. The list continues on throughout state government, and we are still lounging there with an outreach and advocacy title. This does nothing more with the amendments to House Bill 3 passed in 2006 that both of you all supported. It does nothing more than change the name, basically. Has no fiscal impact whatsoever. And I believe that, you know, it's just time for us to reward our two people in advocacy and outreach with a proper name because they're doing so much more today than what originally was assigned to this department. And if I could, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, I'd like to give a shout out to my president of my county commission, Buddy Hans, sitting up there in the right-hand corner. And I also see he brought along Randy Guy from Southern Maryland as well. So I don't know what they've got cooked up today, but I'm gonna hang around and find out. Thank you all very much. Please give us a favorable report on this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Secretary Owens. We know if Buddy Hans around, it's got to be trouble. So that concludes the hearing on the renaming that's coming from the agency. It's always a pleasure to see you, George. Thank you. We're going to go to Delegate Adams, 395, Home Improvement Contracts Deposits. Delegate Adams will be followed by Ms. Price, Mike O'Halloran from the NFIB, Bob Enton from the building industry, Jason Weintraub, also building industry. As I look at the witness list, there's no one signed up in either oral or written opposition. So please let us be concise. We have one bill that will take us some time this afternoon. Welcome, Delegate Adams, to EHE.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. I excel in being concise. I have that bill before you today. My chairman, Davis, had an almost identical bill, so I'll just briefly describe the nature of the issue. I'm trying to approach an issue with deposits being paid on residential construction contracts, where I was trying to get up to a half paid up front. The current law under the MHIC only allowed 1/3. Chairman Davis had basically the same bill, but it was concerned that consumers were being charged for the full amount of the contract before the job was complete. And unfortunately, in the MHIC world, that allowed that to happen. So think of it through the lens of a construction project at home. Maybe you're doing flooring. Chairman Davis didn't want to have the contract paid for before the work was done. My bill was trying to get more deposit paid up front. So what you have before you today is the chairman's bill and my bill pushed together, allowing for a third down, but a half at the beginning of a construction project, and that the balance of that work is not to be completed until the work's completed, done. There was a amendment that allowed for contracts that are over $10,000 that incorporated larger contracts, multi-trade contracts, the building industries that, deal in draws against construction progress. And so the bill incorporated that. I'm pleased in closing to let the committee know that we earned the support of the Attorney General's office, where in the past they've opposed this legislation. So they recognize the balance for consumer protection, and at the same time trying to make whole the contractor that's trying to make the world of home constructions possible through better cash flow. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to bring the bill for you, and would ask for your favorable report.
Delegate, can you stay around for a couple minutes in case there are questions?
Of course.
Okay, let's go to Ms. Price, followed by Mr. O'Halloran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and honorable members of the committee. Again, my name is Sarah Price, here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Association. Allowing contractors to collect up to half of the agreed upon price upfront, or to establish a pay draw schedule for larger projects will, in short, allow contracts to proceed more smoothly and will have a positive impact on the cash flow for small businesses and independent contractors. We did work with the sponsor and the other stakeholders in the House committee to develop and approve those amendments and to address the concerns that were brought up while still easing burdens on contractors. And we support that version that is before you today. So with that, I would thank you for your consideration and urge a favorable report.
Thank you, Ms. Price. Let's go to Mr. O'Halloran, followed by Bob Enton.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Senate Education, Health, Environmental Affairs Committee. For the record, Mike O'Halloran on behalf of NFIB Maryland, in strong support of House Bill 395, legislation allowing a home improvement contractor to receive up to 50% of a contract price before commences. Obviously, there are other parts of the bill that the sponsor has outlined. Look, we all know that a positive cash flow is critical to the success of any company in the trades industry, particularly at a time when supply costs are up because of COVID-19. Passing HB 395 is more critical than ever. Contractors honestly have only so much credit to spread around when it comes to paying their distributors. So increasing cash on hand for them, like this bill does, allows contractors to take on additional projects, close out accounts faster, and generally increases their ability to better manage their financial resources. But it does not do so at the expense of the consumer. As the AG's written testimony points out, limiting collection of the balance of a contract prior to completion will also limit the number of consumers who will be harmed by, quote, disreputable or undercapitalized contractors. As my colleague before me mentioned, I'd like to thank the sponsor and the House Economic Matters Committee for the work they've put into this bill. Some of you may recall that this bill has indeed, as the sponsor pointed out, been before the committee before. But the biggest difference, obviously, this year, as I just alluded to, is that it has the support of the Attorney General's office, unlike years past. So for all these reasons, NFIB Maryland supports HB 395 and requests a favorable committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halloran. Is Bob Enton with us? I don't know if I've seen him. Bob, are you here?
I think he is in finance, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. How about Jason Weintraub?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the committee. Good afternoon. For the record, Jason Weintraub on behalf of Maryland Building Industry Association in support of House Bill 395. I think the previous witnesses pretty much summed everything up. We are in strong support of this bill and just want to thank the sponsor for his work on the issue over the years and request a favorable report on House Bill 395.
Thank you. Thanks for your brevity. Before I go to the Vice Chair, just a quick question. I used to hear or use a third, a third, a third, a third up front, a third midway, and a third at the end. Is that not the practice? Obviously, the contractor would like more money up front, I guess, to buy materials. But is the whole third approach not de rigueur at the moment?
So, Mr. Chairman, let me explain briefly the concern with MHIC as it currently exists. And I think I would describe it to you the way our chairman did, which is the law allows for only a third to be paid down. And then the balance could theoretically be paid 2 days afterwards. So under certain circumstances, and apparently the chairman had this happen, he paid all the money up front before the work was complete. So I think what you're asking, and our subcommittee had lengthy discussion about this, would be, well, how do we help the businesses? Because a third is not enough to pay for the cost of goods and getting off the ground. At the same time, resolve the concerns with the Attorney General's office, which is they don't want money to be paid before the work's complete. So the grand negotiation ended up being what you see before you today. If we do a third, and a third, it does tend to ignore larger contracts. So think $40,000, $50,000, kitchen remodels where you've got multiple trades, you've got flooring, you've got plumbing, electrical, cabinetry. And so what those contractors are used to are draw schedules, like, okay, I get 20% at this measure of progress and half at this measure of progress. So we resolved it that way. And then for these contracts under 10,000, we felt that we could protect the consumer by going to a half before work's done and then the other half when the work's completed.
Okay, thank you for the explanation, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first off, the chair was along the same lines I was. So a third, a third, a third. I remember legislation in the past about that. I was also wondering where the consumer advocates are. I understand the impact on small businesses. I understand cash flow and paying overhead and workers and stuff, but none of you have talked about the consumer protection aspect. You also both two of you referenced the Attorney General, and I'm reading the letter here from Karen Strawn from the Consumer Protection Division. So can you just explain what it is that changed their position from opposed to you said that they're now okay with the bill?
Yeah, they support it. So, but basically the bill that you have before you today incorporates Chairman Davis's version of this bill, which speaks to the monies can't be paid until the work's complete. So what was happening and the concern that the Consumer Protection Division was, they were getting testimony of contractors collecting monies up front and just simply not showing up and doing the job. And current MHIC law, frankly, allows for that. And so where I think consumer protection fell is, if you read the bill, it says that the balance of these monies due are upon completion. And that's the part that the AG's office likes, is that we're now further defining the nature of the pay and performance, right? So just not the payment, but also you've got to back that up as a contractor for your performance. And I'm happy to say that I brought this bill in years past. Chairman Davis had a different thought on this that actually I think has earned the support of the Consumer Protection Division and hopefully is enough to get this across the finish line. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Delegate. I heard you talk about mushing the bills together, but I was seeing the testimony. So thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Mr.
Yes, they were nailed together, Senator. Okay, further questions? Seeing none, that completes the hearing. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we could say that we just don't want the consumers to get screwed. To use another pun.
And on and on and on. Thank you, all the witnesses. Thank you, Delegate Adams, for joining us at EHE.
Thanks for having me.
Let's go to Delegate Smith. Are you with us, Delegate Smith?
I think she is still testifying in another committee.
Okay, then we will move on to the other bill. Is Delegate Crosby with us?
I do believe so. Let me check.
Delegate Crosby
was there. It might have left back out. I do not see Delegate Crosby. Let me get them.
Well, we're going to keep rolling. Is Corey McDaniel here? How about Ricardo Winchester?
Yes, Corey McDaniel's here.
Okay, we're going to get started. I apologize to Delegate Smith, but we got trains to catch, bills to move. Let's start with Mr. McDaniel. This is Senate Bill 1317, Employment of Apprentice Barbers Alterations, and Ricardo Winchester to follow if he is with us. So, Mr. McDaniel, you're on.
Yes, I'd like to say hello to the committee. We started this bill off in 2019. It was House Bill 1021, and the bill actually got passed. Only had one problem. The state board didn't recognize it because it was one word. It said student instead of saying apprentice, and we wasn't able to fix the problem. So then we came back in 2020 and we put the bill back on the table. It was House Bill 1041, and then that bill, because of COVID, of course, got wiped off the table at that time. It went through all of the it would state that instead of us being able to just train one barber at a time, and it takes normally a year or so, that we can go from 1 to 3, but that we can train 3 barbers. This would be really good because it helps with the situation with having barbers working in shops illegally, not knowing state board sanitation and those different things. So we have a program where I actually train barbers, and I do it on a regular, but what happens is we're only able to train one at a time. And so what we wanted to do is just just wanted to take it up to 3. Like I said, it got passed before, and we have so many barbers that was waiting during that time when the bill got passed, and then they were upset to see that the state
that
board,
we're moving on.
that the state board didn't recognize it,
People
and so
are testifying. So
we need to mute. Sorry, Mr. McDaniel.
Oh, okay, no problem. Yeah, so it was so many barbers that was hurt that they wasn't able to start as of October the 1st, 2019. And so we just hoping that the bill just goes through and it passes through now, because we never had really any opposition or anything to the bill. And we just want to be able to move forward so that we can help to bring more people in who can't afford to go to a regular barbering school. A lot of people can't afford it because that's between $10,000 to $17,000, to go to regular barbering school. So the apprenticeship is a way for people to be able to come on board and not have to, if they don't have it, not to have to pay that amount of money. And Ricardo, he's one of my barbers that went through my program, and he's one of my apprentice barbers that's actually a licensed barber now, and getting ready to get his master barber license also, where he'll be able to add on. But that's Ricardo. He can tell you his story.
Okay, Mr. Winchester, welcome to our hearing. You can unmute, and if you want to put your picture on, fine. If you don't, that's fine. Please begin.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, just a little bit louder.
Okay. How about now?
You're fine. Please proceed.
Okay. Yes, I was once a student in Mr. McDaniel's barbering boot camp. It was a great decision I made. I eventually became a licensed barber, and now I'm on the verge of becoming my own master barber. I vote in favor of the bill. I think it's a great thing. It will create a pool of eligible barbers that will be able to contribute to creating other licensed barbers around the city. And that's it.
Senator Winchester, you just got promoted. Were you cut off or were you done?
Yeah, I think I'm done.
Okay, I mean, you don't have to add on. That's fine. Okay. Senators, we had to move on without Delegate Smith. Anybody have any questions?
Delegate Smith just joined us.
Delegate Smith, we were on a fairly fast track, so we moved ahead with the 2 witnesses. If you'd like to jump in and say a few words, that's great. We're near the end of the bill hearing. I'm sorry to do that to you.
No, I'm sorry for just
being on another bill hearing forever. I apologize for that. Thank you for your willingness to at least move the bill along. I really do appreciate that, Chairman, very much. I just wanted to add thank you to my colleagues on this committee. I just think this is a common sense bill to help some good people ensure that people are adequately trained, and we can get some good workforce development opportunities around preparing people to be barbers. And a last thing to think about, there's some people doing some really good barbering already, but without license. So if we can get some of our neighbors and folks that are already engaging in some of this activity to be appropriately licensed, I think that's a win-win for everyone, whether you have hair or not. So I thank you for your time, and I do hope that you have a good rest of your afternoon and favorably support this bill.
Let's see if there are any questions, Delegate Smith. Any questions for Delegate Smith or her witnesses? Seeing none, I guess we shaved that close. Oh, sorry. I withdraw that comment. Okay, that completes 1317. Have we been joined by Delegate Crosby?
Not yet.
Well, we're going to start.
Mr. Chairman.
He has been notified?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, he has been notified.
I just spoke to him. He's in finance for another bill hearing. So.
Okay. Well, there are plenty of witnesses. He'll probably be back in time. This is local elections, county commissioner and county boards of education, district voting. We've probably heard a little bit about this bill previously. Let's start the favorable. Let's start with Ellen Cole. Then we'll go to Rod Lewis, I believe. Hold on. No.
Delegate Crosby just got in if you wanted to start with him.
Delegate Crosby? Okay, Delegate Crosby, we're just getting started on 655. Welcome to Education, Health, and Environment. We'll start with you to present the bill, then we'll go to Ellen Cole, Angiza Acheli McKenzie, BJ Hall, and then Roderick Lewis. We'll take questions and then we'll go to the unfavorables. Welcome, Delegate Crosby.
Thank you so much, Senator Pinsky, and I apologize. I was double booked in briefing in finance. So,
not necessary.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and honorable members of the committee. My name is Brian Crosby, and for the record, it's an honor to present House Bill 655 entitled Local Elections, County Commissioner, and County Boards of Education District Voting. This bill is about fairness, equality, and diversity, and it simply states that for local county commissioner and school board races, which was amended into the bill on the House floor, in their elections, if a district exists, the votes must come from that district. That's it. It simply improves democracy at the local level by instituting in-district voting and ends a discriminatory and anti-democratic policy that has historically prevented minority political factions from engaging in the political process. Specifically, some counties in Maryland have historically operated under at-large voting systems for county commissioner and school board elections. Although candidates are required to reside in the district they represent, they are voted for by the citizens outside of their district. You can see that this system demonstrated in the graphic I included at the end of my written testimony. Despite yellow losing half of the districts by a 2-to-1 margin, the at-large voting system will result in 4 yellow victories. And this means that 42% of the voters who cast ballots for the green candidates will not have a single representative for their community's specific needs. So the easier way to think about that is 50% of the vote plus 1 gets you 100% of the votes on the board. And this electoral system directly conflicts with the idea of a representative government. The people of Pennsylvania don't pick our senators, the people from Virginia don't pick our governor, and the people from any other county in Maryland, like I'll give you an example, Montgomery County doesn't choose who represents St. Mary's County here in Annapolis. If I proposed a bill to change the General Assembly's electoral system to an at-large districted voting system, I highly doubt the opponents of this bill would support that. So just think about it like this. If I had to only live in St. Mary's County, the people of Prince George's County or the people of Montgomery County would essentially choose who represents the entire state. And that system benefits me, and I don't think that that is fair. During the House floor debate, Majority Leader Eric Lukey, he gave a more contemporary real-life example using Montgomery County School Board elections. Up until the 1980s, Montgomery County School Board members were elected at large. When a push to change this process was made in the mid-80s, the frustration was that too many officials were elected from the more populist Democratic-leaning Down County, as many of you from Montgomery County are familiar with. I mean, I'm using Delegate Lukey's example here. However, instead of implementing a simple in-district voting to include Republican voices, the county implemented a school board districts that engaged or ensured geographic representation, but then were elected at large. This achieved the goal of electing individuals from the more conservative up-county areas. However, Democratic voters from the down county were able to overpower the local preference of any single district, resulting in continued down county Democratic control of Montgomery County school boards. This system was originally proliferated during the Jim Crow era as a way to disenfranchise Black voters in the South. Its sole purpose is to disadvantage and discourage racial or ideological minority groups. But we must keep in mind that criticisms of this system are not necessarily personal criticisms of the people who have fallen into those systems. I'm not trying to attack anyone by saying that this system, because it came about in Jim Crow, is now somehow implying that other individuals that are using it today are being racist. It's just they've fallen into that system. And I think that the system itself is undemocratic and should change. Counties have been made to do this in the past. Here in Maryland, in 1985, Dorchester County went through it. And then 1995, Worcester County was also forced to do this. And this policy and the reason behind the bill actually preempts future lawsuits that could come forward. And, you know, frankly, they get kind of messy. And I don't want to see that go through the court system if we can do that through just changing the policy here in Maryland. I want to be clear, this bill does not guarantee success of any one political party, minority group, or person. It simply gives a district the fair opportunity to elect who best represents them. And for that reason, I ask for a favorable report, and I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Delegate, do you have time to stick around where I can take the other proponents and then group the questions together?
Absolutely, Senator Pinsky. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's go to Ms. Cole, followed by Ms. McKenzie, followed by BJ Hall.
Right, thank you, Madam. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Senate Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. My name is Ellen Cole. I'm an assistant professor of environmental studies at St. Mary's College of Maryland. I'm my PhD in human geography with a specialty in policies and conduct of local governments outside major urban areas and how structural racism impacts local experiences. I'm speaking today in favor of House Bill 655 as an expert in my field and as a faculty member, but not as a representative of St. Mary's College of Maryland. So in my written testimony, I summarize the history of voter disenfranchisement, demonstrating how at-large voting represents a second-generation barrier to voting, or what some have called Jim Crow 2.0. So these direct structural barriers arose when direct forms of voter disenfranchisement, such as all-white primaries, poll taxes, literary taxes, restrictive and arbitrary registration, and grandfather clauses were ruled unconstitutional. At this point, jurisdictions turned to, and I quote the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, quote, a remarkable variety and persistence of laws disenfranchising minority citizens, such as at-large voting, voter identification laws, racial gerrymandering, and discriminatory annexations. And these laws were developed as a direct response to the end of the Jim Crow era. They were designed to continue to limit the participation of Black, Indigenous, people of color, poor people, and young voters. At-large voting systems are still widely used across the United States, even though they result in a situation where 51% of the voters can elect all representatives in a county. There's much debate as to whether the elimination of the at-large voting increases diverse representation of elected officials, primarily because it's contingent on the context within which voting takes place. However, there is consensus in the literature that the transition to district voting from at-large voting does not make elected bodies less diverse. While transitioning from at-large voting to district-based voting will not address all forms of voter suppression, It is a step towards ensuring all Maryland counties afford representation to their citizens at the local level. Societies cannot be democratic if they are structured to allow the majority to silence the voices of the minority. And it's critical to remember district voting does not prescribe outcomes, as Delegate Crosby said. Instead, it allows communities to self-identify and speak in their own voices. And this is fundamentally empowering and democratic. Systematic voter suppression has been a tool historically and contemporarily for white power structures to silence the voice of communities along racial, religious, class, and immigrant lines. Regardless of the systems used, what has remained consistent are the long-standing and deep-rooted race-based exclusion from voting. Our society has created these structures, and again, emphasizing what Delegate Crosby said, it's about the structures, not the individuals, that perpetuate these forms of racism, and hence the term structural racism. And this is wrong. Simply put, our democracy and communities are strengthened by diversity. In my written testimony, I showed the discriminatory impact, and again, I emphasize impact, not intent, of at-large voting. For example, in St. Mary's County, where 74% of the population is white, 100% of the current county commissioners are white, and there's only been one Black county commissioner. The importance of diverse and descriptive representation at the local level cannot be underestimated. District voting creates opportunities to elect someone voters believe will best represent their district's needs. The importance of diverse representation at the local level, again, cannot be underestimated and has been widely documented by scholars. An eminent political scientist, David Cannon, wrote, and I quote, "There is, quote, very little support that whites are just as able to represent Black interests as Blacks. This can be seen in the type of legislation proposed, how much money and infrastructure projects are developed, and the relationship between communities, policymakers, and law enforcement." And while he was examining the experiences of African Americans, this extends to other groups. This is not only reflected in the policies passed, but also in the relationships communities have with governing and legal bodies. A legal scholar, Ruth Greenwood, found that, quote, "descriptive representation for people of color at the local level has the potential to significantly improve the lives of communities of color." Legislators must counter second-generation forms of voter disenfranchisement and histories of racial discrimination by erasing vestiges of structural racism. Requiring county commissioners and board of elections to be selected by their district constituents rather than at large is a structural step towards allowing the voices of Black, Indigenous, people of color to be heard through local representation. That step towards a more perfect union is why I am asking for a favorable report on House Bill 655. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Cole. Ms. McKenzie?
Good afternoon. My name is Angasa Ichile McKenzie, and I'm the Director of Southern Marylanders for Racial Equality. We work in Charles, Calvert, and St. Mary's counties on a number of issues, and these are three of the counties that are affected by House Bill 655. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee members, for having me. I'm happy to be speaking to you today in support of HB 655 because poor and minority voices should not be tamped down by the majority in any county. Yes, there are racial inequalities created by the current system, as you have heard and will continue to hear. Many Black voters in counties don't have representation in their county governments, as in St. Mary's. Yes, the current system allows one party or the other to hold a vice grip on power and to overlook the needs of certain communities. There's pockets of voters all over our state whose interests are just simply being ignored, and not just along racial lines. This is a socioeconomic issue. That's why I also supported Delegate Crosby's other bill, 656, regarding polling locations along transportation routes. In my county of Charles, we do have multiple Black county commissioners because our population shifted. However, we also have food deserts, commercial dead zones, and places where there are no stores, no jobs, no recreational opportunities. And previously, when I supported this bill, I didn't really get very specific, but I'm going to get a little bit more specific today. There are at least, according to Lifestyles of Maryland, 72 families in Nanjemoy that don't have power, internet, running water, etc. We have several nonprofit organizations who have taken up the charge and busted their humps to provide services, food, potable water gallons, porta potties to people who live in these areas. But this is the government's job. This is the government's burden to carry. So why is it that we have development on steroids in places like Waldorf, La Plata, especially, which is our county seat. When we have places in our county that still, during this pandemic, whose children can't even log on for virtual school because they don't have the internet signal. So we have places where people have to travel multiple miles just to get medical care or go to a doctor's appointment. And this is the result of at-large voting. People in districts watch, the poor districts watch as the richer districts continue to grow and grow and grow. So for me, this isn't just about black and white. This is about haves and have-nots. Why is Maryland a state in which we have such an imbalance of economy, such an imbalance of education, such an imbalance in law enforcement? Well, it's because people don't have the ability to decide which person represents their interests. And so this bill is a step forward in fixing that problem. And so it also enables candidates to focus on districts. So that means that candidates with less money can focus on a narrower area when they're campaigning to make sure that they are reaching just those constituents and not having to campaign county-wide.
Thank you, ma'am. Your time is up, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let's go to Mr. Hall.
I almost want to say exactly what they said, but no. Thank you, Chairman Pensky, Madam Vice Chair, honorable members. My name is William Hall, president of the St. Mary's County branch of the NAACP. The St. Mary's County branch and the Maryland State Conference of the NAACP strongly encourage a favorable committee vote for HB 655. This bill is about improving democracy, period. I've heard several comments about and/or questions about who specifically is impacted by the current system. I argue everyone that's in it. If a district doesn't have exclusive rights to choose its representation, something is wrong with that system, and the voters of that jurisdiction are not being properly served. The at-large nature of our elections dilute voting power, is anti-democratic, and runs counter to the spirit of Voting Rights Act. This system silences the voices of voters from each commissioner district, replacing their voices with those of the majority of the county, potentially leaving voters with local representation elected by others. This bill seeks to rectify this problem in St. Mary's and other counties around the state. It requires the candidates to be elected by the majority of the votes in the district that they hope to represent. Each state and federally elected official in Maryland has to win its district in which they are running. The people residing in rural counties of Maryland deserve the right to have that same rule apply in our county elections. In St. Mary's County specifically, this results in the disenfranchisement of a large number of our minority voters. Votes from the rest of the county dilute the votes of our community. Our county has only elected one Black commissioner, the Honorable John Lancaster, the Good Bros. And this is unacceptable. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 prohibits the voting practices or procedures that result in discrimination or the abridgment of the right of any citizen to vote. Most challenges that fall under that section involve at-large voting schemes similar to the one that we have in our county. HB 655 would fix that outside of the courtroom. We stand in solidarity with the NAACP branches of the counties impacted by similar systems and with the Maryland State Conference of the NAACP, and we're calling for reform. Those who champion democracy and civil rights must do everything they can to strengthen it. This bill is one way the Maryland General Assembly can strengthen democracy in our state. For these reasons, the St. Mary's County branch and the Maryland State Conference and NAACP urge the committee to issue a favorable report for HB 655. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Let's go to Mr. Lewis.
Good evening, Chairman Pensky and Vice Chair Kagan and all members of the committee. I really appreciate the opportunity to come before you and express my strong favor of House Bill 655. I am a St. Mary's County resident. I've been a St. Mary's County resident for 8 years now. First moved to the county to attend college at St. Mary's College of Maryland. I was a political science major, and when I tell you, when I moved to the county, I immediately got involved into local politics and community organizing. And one of the first things I did was to look up my county government structure to figure out who my representative was. And to my surprise, I didn't really have a direct representative. I found out that we had county commissioners that were elected countywide, and that if I wanted to express my issue on a particular topic, I needed to contact one of them and hopefully my voice would get heard. Well, let me tell you, 8 years later, it is extremely hard to get the attention of my local county commissioners. They tell me that that I have five people that I can reach out to, and that they're all willing to listen to me and they're willing to work with me. But in reality, I'm going around in circles and circles and circles trying to get my voice heard, and it's extremely difficult. I have friends that live in other parts of the state, and they only have one local representative to be in touch with. Direct line to the person who's representing them in government. In St. Mary's County, it's not like that. It's extremely difficult. And with this bill, we're just asking for a little bit assistance in communicating to the officials that are doing our business on the local level. And it's a very simple request. And I'm really asking that you hear us out and that you give us the opportunity to fight a little bit more for the people that we support in our home, in our neighborhoods, and this bill will help us do that. So with that being said, I won't take any more of your time. Everyone that's spoken so far on the bill have made excellent points. So I urge you all to support this legislation. And like the Speaker of the Maryland State House said, it's the most important voting rights bill moving in the Maryland General Assembly at this moment. So now is the time to be champions of democracy and support this legislation. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question either for Delegate Crosby or for one of the witnesses. So I'm just looking through the testimony, and it appears that our friends at the Maryland Association of Counties are coming in against the bill, talking about one size fits all and the autonomy of local government. And since proponents can't answer after the opponents speak, I just wanted to ask for you to anticipate those arguments and see if you would address those and why you think this bill is worthy despite those concerns.
Thank you so much, Madam Vice Chair. It's a great question. I think that the fundamental question here is, where does local control start and stop? And I think when it comes to the argument of elections, that is an integral part to democracy. And so the state has a duty to intervene to make sure everybody is doing the right and fair thing across the board in all of its jurisdictions. And that's simply how I would respond to, Mako's testimony. Additionally, we heard a lot of opposition as this bill has moved, and the opposition has been all over the place. And then at the very end, seemingly, of right before it went to the House floor, we heard this argument of a referendum and let the local counties decide. And I would say two things to that. The first is that was never proposed up until it was the final, the last ditch effort. And then the second is, let's just be real about it. People in power want to remain in power. And this is about having a more fair democracy. And in a democracy, especially in an American democracy, fair representation is the hallmark, and the majority doesn't get to silence the minority. And so, I would refer everybody back to the end of my testimony, where you just see simply the green and yellow bubbles. And, you can see how somebody could win 42% or really even 49% of the vote and have 0 votes on their local government. And that's really what this comes down to. So I really appreciate the question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Delegate Crosby. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Let's go with Senator Gallion, followed by Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Delegate. So it was probably 20 years. I live in Harford County, probably about 20 years ago. We're a charter, though, which is a little different. We switched, I believe, by the 2002 election, switched from countywide votes of the 6 council districts and of course the council president was already at large, to in-district elections. But the process they went through was, to the best of my memory, that it was brought up early to the folks at the county level. There was debate and discussion about it, and I believe it was brought up for referendum at the county level. So, and then ultimately, honestly, it passed. So it's in district, like I mentioned, since 2002. Did you go to the locals in these counties and try to get this individually in these counties and give them the opportunity to debate this at the county level and come up with a decision, from the voters at that level? Or did you just come into this with kind of an idea and not go to them?
I would say two things. The first is similar to Senator Kagan's question on the referendum. I think that I answered that in the last question. The second is, or the second part to that is, to be completely honest with you, when I put this bill in, I frankly didn't expect it to get the political attraction that it got, one. And then two, when I studied through the history, starting all the way back to when St. Mary's County implemented theirs during 1851, and then seemingly reaffirmed it twice since then. I think the last time was in the 1970s. I was just looking at the process overall, and just trying to determine whether or not it was fair or not, and whether the state should step in if it were not fair, to be completely frank and blunt with you. So, there is some sort of argument that people haven't had the ability to have input on this bill. I think it's kind of disingenuous to say that people in a public bill hearing, streamed live on YouTube, haven't had the ability to weigh in to other legislators, whether it's on Ways and Means or here today in EHE. So I do think that there has been an adequate amount of time for people to weigh in on the bill. And then the last little bit I would say is that this has been kicked around. A lawsuit has really been kicked around for the better part of 3 years. And I have waited to put this bill in until this year to figure out what the Attorney General office was going to do, or whether people were going to bring suit. And I finally just made the decision that it's probably not worth it to go down this messy route if we can fix it from a policy perspective.
Okay, so I think that was kind of a long answer for no. You didn't really check with them too awful much ahead of time. But then the one other thing I'd like to ask, early on, you mentioned trying to make a comparison that what if all the members of General Assembly were elected, with everybody in the state voting for, I think that's kind of, wouldn't you say it's kind of apples and oranges though, when you're talking about 188 members statewide that you would be voting for. So in a primary, you could have, 600 or 700 folks on a ballot. Obviously that logistically couldn't work, but at a county level, you're looking at, I don't know, most of them are 3, 5, 7 members. So I think comparing that, I just don't really think that matches up, but okay, thanks.
Thank you, Senator Ellis. Senator Ellis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Delegate Crosby, for bringing this bill and for jumping into this very energized debate with this tremendous leadership. I just want to talk about and ask a question about, there's a Maryland Matters article on March 18th that talk about this very issue. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. So they have 3 pictures on their website of the makeup of the county commissioners in St. Mary's, Calvert, and I forgot the third one. And something's very striking. It's all members of one gender and race, and they say white men. And so and I think Ms. McKenzie mentioned this, that we should not think of this as just a black-white issue. When we work on making opportunities open for one, we make it open for all. And our population, all these counties throughout, has a lot of ladies, a lot of African-Americans, Asian Americans. And so the title for this article, it talks about at-large districts are relics that produce absurd results, voting experts say. And so we look at our democracy now. We look at our America. We look at the General Assembly, and we look at representation. It's very much diverse. Talking about gender and racial and talking about experiences. And so, I mean, why would anyone oppose including everyone in their county as far as having a chance to be represented? I don't know if Delegate Crosby can
Well,
talk about that a little bit.
look, I think, Senator, that can be asked to the opponents. I think by the very introduction of this bill, I think Senator Crosby has explained where he is on this issue. So I'm going to say, isn't that so, to your question? And if you want to ask it again when the opponents come up or after they've spoken, I think it's totally appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, further questions? Seeing none, we will now go to the opponents. So you'll still have an opportunity, Senator Ellis. We're going to start with James Moran from Queen Anne's, followed by Randy Guy of St. Mary's, followed by Buddy Hance of Calvert County, and followed by Michael Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam and Vice Chair. This is Jim Moran. I am the at-large county commissioner for Queen Anne's County here in opposition to this bill. And you know, after listening to the comments made earlier and also in the House side, you know, I guess I struggle to understand how someone in another county can tell Queen Anne's County, a population of only 50,000 people, that voting at large is bad for Queen Anne's County. I mean, I see that there's an issue with the color of commissioners, and I notice that Queen Anne's County, you're right, has all 5 are white commissioners. We've had an African-American commissioner. We have an African-American president of our school board. We have a population of less than 10% that's African-American. So does that mean that we are not including them? I struggle with some of these comments. You know, what happens if you vote by district and you don't get the outcome that you're looking for, i.e. you don't get either African-Americans elected or they don't switch the seat from Republican to Democrat? Do we redraw the districting lines just like we did for our congressman? I mean, I'm at a loss of words for fairness and equity when another county, Queen Anne's County, has been the jewel of the Eastern Shore. We have to deal with the Bay Bridge and that traffic, but our schools are in great shape. Our economy is in great shape. We take next to no handouts from the state of Maryland. You know, we have no crime, we have no complaints. And yet here it is, we're lumped in with St. Mary's because we are a home rule county that has been very efficient and run extremely well over the last 20 or 30 years. But now all of a sudden there's concern about, you know, well, you know, you have to redistrict because it's the fair way to do it. And I will tell you that what we did in Queen Anne's County, in 2016, I led this same argument. I led this argument. We put it to a referendum. We wanted the public to weigh in on this. We wanted the public to tell us, the citizens of Queen Anne's County, how do you want to elect? And again, it came back overwhelmingly that they wanted to keep at-large voting for all 5 commissioners because we are a small county, 50,000 people. So everybody wants to make sure that they can elect that person who's going to either raise their taxes or not raise their taxes. That person that's going to fund the school system or not fund the school system. It has never been an issue of race in Queen Anne's County. And again, I can't say that for the rest of the state, but I can say that for Queen Anne's County. So, you know, that's why there was a amendment to exclude Queen Anne's County. There was an amendment, I believe, to take everybody to a referendum to vote for it. You know, I heard a comment that, you know, it only takes 51% and then you control everything. Well, we just had a president elected that got a little over 51%, 51.5, I think it was, and he controls everything. Are we saying that that's wrong? I mean, you know, does the majority not rule anymore? Again, you can't lump, I take, for instance, Anne Arundel County, 500,000 people. We're 1/10 their size. Should we vote everybody by district? And you know, again, it comes back resounding from our constituents that that's not the way they want to go. So, you know, we oppose this bill, and I will say that, you know, I'm going to say one more thing, and it pains me to say this, but I think St. Mary's County and Queen Anne's County are all Republicans that are elected. And yet here we sit under fire because we want to change a districting, hoping that that maybe will flip a seat. I don't know, but that's the only thing that we can take out of it from Queen Anne's County. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Mr. Guy. You have to unmute, Mr. Guy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you and the members of the committee. I am Randy Guy, President and Commissioner of St. Mary's County. I'm here today on behalf of current and former commissioners, both Republicans and Democrats, to express our opposition to House Bill 655 as proposed by Delegate Brian Crosby. This proposed bill seeks to unilaterally undermine the will of the people of St. Mary's County by insisting upon mandating how we choose and vote for local officials. Historically, the people of St. Mary's County have been active and vocal in making their choices for local representation. These choices include electing commissioners who can individually and collectively represent the entire county. Each commissioner responds to, advocates for, and serves not only their district, but every St. Mary's County constituent. There are no economic, geographic, or legislative lines drawn. We all work to serve all of the county, regardless of what district we represent. Our system is not broken, and we do not tend to be told how to restructure it. Past and present commissioners have repeatedly been unopposed to their bids for election and re-election. Surely, if residents were dissatisfied, they have been no competing candidates to support the allegation of disenfranchisement. St. Mary's County voters have and continue to speak. They know who they want to represent them and how they want to vote for them. Our residents have not asked to change this way the county votes. Recently, we attempted to change our form of government from commissioner to code home rule. The people voted no. We, the commissioners of St. Mary's County, have a clear and open path to letting voters tell us what they feel is important. In St. Mary's County, we have public hearings, public forums, and a process of open and transparent government. The Maryland Association of Counties and the Maryland Rural County Coalition stand with us in opposition to this proposed bill because it is not a good or effective way to mandate how we in St. Mary's County or any other county vote. There are other counties like Prince George's County have executive type election at large. How come they're not included in this bill? There's only 5 rural counties of commissioner type form of government that are included. In closing, let me restate that we are strongly opposed to House Bill 655 and respectfully request that it be defeated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Guy. Let's go to Buddy Hance.
Chairman Pinsky, good afternoon.
Good to see you, buddy.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and fellow committee members, I appreciate this opportunity to speak today in opposition to HB 655. In Calvert County, we have 5 county commissioners. We have 3 county commissioner election districts. Therefore, we make sure we have geographic coverage of the county, and we have 2 at large. We've had minority commissioners in the past. We currently have minority Board of Education members. I think if you look at Calvert County by itself, our minorities are widely dispersed across the county. And I could argue that going to district voting could harm a minority so that all the minorities couldn't join together to vote and support that individual. So we did not know anything about this legislation until I got a phone call saying, did you know Senator Crosby or Delegate Crosby had introduced a bill to include Calvert County in this legislation. We submitted a recommendation to the House for a referendum, which was defeated. We believe it would be important for our citizens to make that decision if they want to change the way we vote here in Calvert County. Just like my friend in Queen Anne's County, we're a small rural county. And we've not heard any complaints about our system. To my knowledge, our local NAACP has not weighed in on this bill. So for those reasons of county autonomy, we strongly oppose House Bill 655. And I would like to point out that I believe when I served in Annapolis, there were some at-large districts for House delegates across the state of Maryland. So I guess if we're going to change our form of election, then next we should look at the way the House of Delegates is elected across the state, because there are certain multi-member districts across the region. So once again, we strongly oppose House Bill 655 and happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hance. Let's go to Michael Sanderson. Go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and committee members. I'm Michael Sanderson with the Maryland Association of Counties. I won't even try to improve upon the arguments you've heard from the elected county commissioners from a number of our member jurisdictions. Instead, I want to try and complement. I'm not even going to bother with the sort of template Mako one-size-fits-all testimony. I hate to disappoint you. But honestly, I think the best use of my 2 minutes is let's play out this conversation. Let's say you're a committee member. You've heard every buzzword about electoral issues and voter issues as part of this testimony, and certainly in the House. Discriminatory, illegal, unconstitutional, equal protection. Every one of those arguments has been volleyed that this structure is fundamentally unfair and illegal and wrong. So let's play that forward. If you think you've got some sympathy and you're concerned about those sorts of things, where's the right place to answer those questions? So as a member of this committee, this is a political body. The Maryland General Assembly is a political body. What's the right venue to sort out issues like those? Have you all read the Gill versus Whitford case, or the Perry case from Texas in 2006? Do you have a team of law clerks who are going to walk through those cases, how they play in Maryland, and what they mean for voting structures in Maryland for county commissioners in your subdivisions in this state? I haven't read those cases either. You don't have the staff for that. You have superb staff for the General Assembly, but they're simply not equipped to handle that kind of consideration. The right place to adjudicate whether Maryland laws or their implementation in a given county or structurally across multiple counties, the right place to raise those issues is in the courts. That's where this question ought to be decided. The courts understand matters of constitutional principles and where federal law and the state's law requires counties to do A, B, or C. You simply aren't in the right venue for this determination. I don't know whether Garrett County voters are being unfairly or illegally disenfranchised by the system they've got in Garrett County. I don't think you do either, but this bill presumes you've got the answer. So Mako, as an organization representing local governments, our position is to defer to local governments to the extent that you need guardrails for their decisions. They ought to come through the proper process, and that's through the US or the Maryland court system. So we respectfully oppose the bill as the wrong response to a potentially legitimate concern that has a venue. It's just not here.
Thank you, Mr. Sanderson. Let's go to Vice Chair Kagan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to former Secretary Buddy Hance, you mentioned, it almost sounded like a threat. Like if you do this, then you should change how the House of Delegates does its districts. I just wanted to flag, and I may not have all of them because I just did it quickly, but District 1, Allegheny, Garrett, and Washington County, District 2, District in Prince George's County, District 23 on the Eastern Shore, District 37. There are sub-districts, and that's either for geographic or demographic and sometimes racial issues to make sure that there is better representation. So this is not without precedent in the General Assembly, and I just thought I would clarify that for you. So,
and Vice Chair Kingman, I would never threaten. I was just trying to make a comparison that, it's apples and oranges.
It's kind of not. It's kind of the same fruit basket. We do different jobs, but there are sub-districts in the General Assembly already. So I'm not sure if you were aware of that. I'm sure you were, but I just want it for anyone else watching. I want to make that clear. We do this, and it's for a good reason. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Carozza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciated Mr. Sanderson's testimony. You're right, we don't have the expertise, and it should be the courts. But my question is for each of the county represented today. I want, and it's really a simple yes or no. Were any of you consulted in the preparation of this major bill, major electoral reform that would impact these counties statewide? Were any of you consulted in the process?
Queen Anne's County was not.
Howard County was not.
St. Mary's County was not.
And Mr. Sanderson, are you aware of any counties that were consulted? You're on mute. You're on mute, Mr. Sanderson.
Apologies, 2021. The first we heard of this issue was the bill. I hadn't heard it coming up from member counties either.
Okay, so a bill with this type of major impact across the board, none of our local county officials were consulted. Is that correct?
To the best of my knowledge.
Thank you.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a lot to unpack, but you asked me to redirect my earlier question to this panel of opponents. And so I hope all of you heard the question, so we'll repeat it in the setup for it. So the point was equity is beyond just black and white. I know a commissioner framed it that way. When we look at the picture from at least 3 commissioner counties at large, it's all white men, no white women, black women, none. It's just all. Is that appropriate? How do you defend that in such a wide, diverse area of the state where the representation is not there for probably 75% of the population? I'm not sure.
So
I'll
go. That just happens to be this board that currently got elected. I'm sitting here now in our hearing room looking around at the pictures on the wall. There's been diversity throughout our history. Just so happens that this current board is all made up of white men. But that's just a function of the candidates that run in the current election, the issues, the topics that they run on. If Calvert County is a small county, it's not that many people. And like I said, if you want to mandate that there's diversity, that's a different topic than talking about setting up, district voting, trying to address the issue. We could set up district voting and still end up with 5 white men or 5 white women or 5 minorities sitting in these chairs. For me, it's just a function of a campaign and election results.
Okay. So Mr. Hance, you were at Calvert County, correct?
That's correct.
Yes. So you mentioned, I think you were the one mentioned the Calvert County School Board have a very diverse member body, correct?
Correct.
Okay. How are those elections run for the Calvert County School Board? Are they based on district or all at large like the commissioners?
They're just like the county commissioners. They're a mix.
When you say mix, and how do you explain?
There's some run for district and some are at large.
How many run for district?
I can't tell you that right now off the top of my head.
How many members on the board, school board, sir?
There's 5 or 6.
5 or 6.
Yes.
Okay. And so it's district wide, and then a smaller number run at large.
Correct.
Okay. So it's amazing, when we had another bill here and deal with a similar issue with the school board, your senator couldn't remember how these elections are held. So I'm not sure why no one knows how elections are held for the school board in the county they represent and the numbers. And so it's really is interesting. And one last question, Mr. Chairman, if you will, can you? Yeah, for the gentleman from Mako, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. The Mako gentleman testified. So what election laws can we pass in Annapolis? You mentioned that we don't have the expertise, the knowledge, the right to pass this law. So that means we shouldn't touch any elections law at all?
Thank you very much for the question, Senator. And please forgive me if I left you with the impression that my testimony was that the General Assembly cannot pass this bill. You certainly can. And actually, the General Assembly may pass a bill tonight to say that Garrett County no longer exists. You can do that. You can fold it right back into Allegheny County. We're creatures of the state. My testimony, if I'm not being clear, let me try to do so and just say, I think you have multiple branches of government, each of whom have a role in assuring, in this case, the rights of voters in Maryland. And back to your earlier question about how do you set the standard? Do you do it by looking at photographs of winners of elections, or do you look at the ways districts are drawn, or the way precincts are composed and so forth? There's better than 50 years of jurisprudence on those exact issues, but they're all in the United States courts and to some degree state courts implementing that, going all the way back to Baker versus Carr in cases like that, that are what all this traces from. But all of that work is being done in the courts. That's where all these guardrails are properly being developed. So please forgive me if I meant to say you're barred from passing this bill. I would just suggest you ought not do so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, before I go to Senator Lamb for the last question, you know, Mr. Sanderson, I just think back to 64 and 65 for the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. That wasn't a time where they went back to the states to work it out, or the courts. Ultimately, the Congress of the United States and the President of the United States had to take action to right a wrong. And it was a situation where they couldn't rely on the states to resolve it. And in fact, the courts either. So they took legislative action to do it. It may be apples to apples, it may be apples to oranges, but I think there are some parallels. Senator Lamb, isn't that so? Senator Lamb.
Yeah, that is so. And I wanted to build on that too with another example that, you know, when it comes to gerrymandering, for example, we tried to rely on the courts and they turned it back on the legislatures to try to fix that too. That, you know, I just fail to understand why, you know, we're turning to the courts to do what is really a legislative responsibility. So, you know, I mean, it seems that Mr. Sanderson, your connotation is to, you know, that we don't really need to do this job, that we can just rely on the courts to legislate for us. That seemed to be an impression.
What I'm suggesting is, let's be candid. This is a different debate than just how should we construct the local management board for children's services in each county, right? I mean, this isn't the garden variety. Mako comes and testifies and says, leave it local, give us flexibility. Every argument that's been persuasive on this bill has been that this is essentially an unconstitutional practice. And my judgment is, if you're inclined, if you have sympathy for that argument, then this is the wrong place to adjudicate whether it's unconstitutional. This bill says Garrett County's voting is unconstitutional. Nobody from Garrett County has been at this hearing or in the House.
But don't the counties derive their authority from the state?
From the state. You are within your legal rights to pass this bill. My testimony is the proper venue to override a local practice on constitutional grounds is in the courts. They're the ones who interpret the Constitution, including all those acts from the 1960s. So it's just a matter of what's the nature of this bill. Is this different from telling us to do a different recycling mandate? Every bit of testimony you've heard suggests this is a different bill. And that's why our testimony is different. This belongs in the courts.
Well, it's not different. I mean, I've seen Mako here testifying in opposition to minorities' rights to vote and access to vote and disability folks as well. So this is not different from my perspective. And I just find it disappointing that you'd be trying to legislate by lawsuit. Isn't that so, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you all. Last question, last witness. We know this is an issue of controversy. We'll take it up in committee. That does include our hearings for the day. I want to thank everyone and their patience. I want to thank the committee. The sun is still out, so it's nice to finish up our work earlier. You did a great job at the earlier voting session and during the hearing. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're adjourned.